from the world's first magic wand to Star Trek and beyond. With immersive real-world props and packaging, the Wand Company is out to prove that owning is believing. And on this episode of Your Geek Fix, we'll be talking with founder, collector, and creator Chris Barnardo about his journey of making fantasy into reality. This is Your Geek Fix. If you watch our videos, you've heard me talk about Chris Barnardo and the Wand Company on at least a few occasions. They're the ones that are responsible for things like this Pip-boy over here. But today, Chris is actually here to talk to us about his journey and all sorts of geeky stuff. Hello, Chris. Where's Chris?
Jeremy, hello. I'm on the computer. I'm over here.
Chris? What are you doing on the computer?
Mainly working actually, because where I am here in the UK, it's quite late in the day. Well, it's lunchtime, but yeah.
Oh, okay. And of course, I'm in the US, so. But welcome to my home. Hey, thanks for coming by. Thanks for being willing to do this.
Great to meet you online properly.
Yeah. I was pretty excited about having you on today because the fact is, Chris is probably the biggest geek that I know.
Don't know about that.
You're a longtime maker and creator of just about anything geek, from TV to movies to video games. And that goes way back before the Wand Company. You're already doing DIY prop building and things like that. Where does this go back to? Like, how far back would you say that all this started?
Yeah, and it went a long way before that, because when I was at home when I was a kid, my mum paid me pocket money to decorate the house, and I got to building things from the age of about 12. But I made a very large Rubik's Cube, about nearly a yard by a yard, and I put my stereo center in it. And somebody said to me, "You should make a company doing that." So I then embarked upon making Rubik Cubes with plastic injection molded squares and things like that. And I still have one. So
How old were you?
I was about 15 or 16 when I did that. Big speakers that were made in the large speakers, floor standing speakers in the shape of juicy fruit and a chewing gum, spearmint chewing gum, with the logos and graphics on them. And it actually turning things from that are fast moving consumer goods or things that are iconic things and turning them into statements of art. Right. I was fascinated by it. And I had an art teacher when I was a kid who really inspired me to do projects where you looked at normal everyday things and you made them into something to do with art. So it's been something that I have been fascinated about really since I was a kid.
Wow. So what did you want to do when you grew up, as it were?
Well, I come from a very medical family, and my parents and family all said, they wanted me to be a medic. But as it turned out, I quite like the idea of that. I do like it. But I wanted to really a graphic artist. From a kid, I wanted to be a graphic artist. I didn't know what it was really, but I loved Roger Dean and all those lovely pictures that Roger Dean did, which I didn't even know he used an airbrush. So I did art like that using spray cans from car paint. And instead of masking with Frisk film, I used to, and for the old school guys know what Frisk film is. No one knows that anymore. Yeah. Using an airbrush and whatever. I would mask using that rubber paint, that latex paint, Copydex and stuff like that. And then peel it off afterwards and then mask again. So I totally. And then when I left school, I thought, shall I go to art college or shall I just try and get a job in design and graphics and whatever? And so I went to work in a studio, an art studio as a junior, just working in those days, the photomechanical transfer camera, the bromide camera.
Right.
The big repromaster, which you had to kind of like take pictures of. Basically, other people letrosetting and doing copy and stuff. This is really old school stuff, but it's the skills about how to, being a junior, you've got the studio guy that works in the studio, like standing over you with a stick, really saying, no, you shouldn't cut that board out like that. Right. That's how you do a mask. I mean, you really learn the hard way.
Right.
And in those days, there was a whole industry of people doing typography, people doing what they used to lick and stick, the cut and paste up and layout.
Yeah. The wax rollers. Remember the wax rollers?
Yeah.
I used to use those.
And cow gum and everything. And nobody knows those skills anymore. And I think when you're doing the scratch building and I was doing like model making with my kids and scratch building, is there so many skills involved in that that translate really well to the modern day where you can use 3D printing and you can do design stuff. Because when I do a design in 3D, I actually think, how would I make this in real life?
Yeah.
And I think if you think how you would actually make it, how you would carve it, how you would fit it together, even though you're doing it in the virtual world, it makes it so much better. So, for example, the Pip-boy, because I mean,
oh yeah,
you love that kit.
Yeah.
That came to me. I had about 9 months. It came to me as as just a game geometry, which was lovely and everything, but it was completely non-functional. It was just the surfaces. It didn't have any structure or anything like that. And in a few weeks, I had to turn it around and make it into a model that not only was a model that fitted together, but actually you could take apart and build.
Right.
And so there was quite a mentally, I was driving to work each day and I was designing it in my head in the car. The radio mechanism where you turn the knob and
the band. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think. I do think a lot about the things and think, well, how would it have been done in the past? How do I get motion from that way to this way? Is it cogs? Is it levers?
And it was so simple in the end. I mean, that's what the genius part of it was. It's so simple, and yet.
But it's also realistic how it realistically works.
Really?
And then, of course, for the radio up, because I mean, in the real old-fashioned radios, they had cords that went round little pulleys and stuff. And as you turn the knob, a cord went round and it dragged the pointer up and down whilst it was doing something else. Now, in the radio upgrade, that mechanism still works. But it's so cool. The pin from the knob goes through the PCB. There's a hole in the PCB. And on the other side, it's got two magnets and a Hall effect sensor. So as you turn it, it goes past the Hall effect sensor. And as the sensor senses the magnet going past, it switches the program to play the in-universe broadcast.
Yeah.
And you have a bit of hiss over the broadcast either end. So it sounds like it's just like breaking into the radio. But in fact, that turning of the knob is just like almost like a switch saying, by the way, you're turning the knob now.
Yeah.
So I think if you have this old school approach, you can think through the multiple layers of a product from the packaging. I mean, I worked in advertising and design for about 10 years before I did an engineering degree. So it means that I can think through all those layers of the product. They all feel really connected, which I think makes the product feel more of a wholesome.
Well, there's something, I mean, for example, with what you did with the Pip-boy, the tricky part is this is something somebody else designed the model originally. So you have all these limitations on, you can expand, you can make it bigger to be able to fit the mechanism. You had to work within what parameters they had preset.
Yeah.
And be creative in that way. But I understand that they did take some things from you as well, and put it into the game. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So in the Pip-boy itself, the original mechanism for the holotape opening, obviously a designer had thought, oh, if you just pull it down, something will happen. But when I actually looked at the mechanism, I thought, there's no way that if you moved that, anything would happen at all. So I sort of redesigned the mechanism for the holotape and said, this is how we're going to do it. They said, we can put that back in the game. That's what you get if an engineer designs something.
Wow.
And then I designed a stand for it. And I thought, well, the stand should look like an arm, and then maybe it could have a hole with the speaker, and it could have this bass and a few pipes and things like that.
Right.
And as we got to build the kit, it became clear that making the stand was too expensive. So the stand died at that stage when we were making the kit, because I wanted the box, and I wanted, the box was a very expensive part of the proposition, but I wanted the whole thing to be a presentation. And then when we went to E3, not this, obviously it's cancelled this year,
but a little harder.
When we went to E3, I think 2 years ago when they announced it, I sat in that massive auditorium. They built a one-time thing like in a big tent on top of a car park. It must have cost hundreds of thousands, I don't know, whatever it cost. There were banks of, thousands of people watching this enormous screen, Todd doing his speech. You can go online and look at it. They revealed the trailer of the game. And right at the beginning, the guy leans forward and takes the Pip-boy off a stand. I nearly fell off my chair. So there's no stand.
That was the first time you saw it in game?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I went to the guys afterwards and said, you used my stand. And he said, oh, yeah, we should credit you. He said, you know what? We thought we had done the design and given you the graphics of it, and then you had made your design from it. So I said, no, it didn't exist at all. So they said, well, it just looked really in universe. I copied the look of the stand from the Institute. I've got this book, The Making of Fallout, which is written by Istvan Peli. He's a great guy, by the way.
So with all the illustrations.
It's absolutely fabulous. So I looked at all the Institute stuff and thought, if there was a kind of a blend between Rob Coe and Vault-Tec and the Institute, so I kind of based it on that design. And I guess they thought that was cool. And then so that was really cool. And then later, the actual Pip-boy kit itself, the actual box, everything in the game as a quest. So really excited to see that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'd love it if some of our fusion flea designs had got into the game as well, because it would be so easy for them just to paint up some fleas in the game.
Oh yeah, I've got one behind me, right there.
Yeah, the blue one.
And now, what I didn't know before too is I figured, I just pictured all these different people as part of the team, but I mean, there's all these in-world things like this.
Yeah.
You know, this postcard, the directions for the flea. What I like about it too is it shows as if it was full size. Putting the batteries up into it. I love that. But you wrote a lot of that. Is that right?
All of it. I do the illustrations. I write the copy. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And there's something about it, as I said, the idea of the fusion flea that you mentioned, with the guy standing there like looking at it. I was just, in my mind, I have this. I think I've got this strong belief that there's no such thing as invention. There's two things. There's evolution and there's discovery. And discovery is a chance accident. You fall over something, and suddenly you see it. And if your eyes are open on that day,
right,
that's the discovery you make. And then there's evolution. And there's nothing. You can't invent something. You can't sit down hardcore and think of something that no one's thought of before. You can put ideas together in a different way, maybe. So that the fusion flea thing is obviously your mind, anyone's mind, is a melting pot of ideas coming in. You take influences. The best thing you can possibly do with it when you want to have new ideas, I believe, is to absorb influences from different areas. So if you want to do something that's creative in, say, design, you look to music and architecture and the news. You look for things that are not in the design world, right, and then you try to incorporate those. And that way, you might do something original. So for the fusion flea, the guy standing there looking at it, I just had this vision of this old-fashioned manual with a guy with his arms folded, standing next to his car, saying, "Well, it's broken. What am I going to do about it?"
Right.
And I thought, with all of our products, if you look at the sonic screwdrivers, I know you're a bit of a Doctor Who fan. If you look at those and you see the writing, specifically the one that we did for the 10th Sonic, and you can go on our website. We don't sell it anymore, but if you look at the 10th Sonic, I decided to describe all the components as if they were actually really hardcore sci-fi stuff, but using terms where they're actually correct. So you talk about a sort of an attractive toroid would be like a magnet, for example, or a certain certain nanometer cable, or whatever you describe. They're actually real descriptions. They all actually are real, but they're in the fantasy world, and that's what I want our products to be. I want them to be right on the kind of in that space between the real and the fantasy.
Well, immersion is one of your biggest things, and you have a saying with your company. The owning is believing, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed also on your crest. I didn't know this till the other day. On the crest, you have in Latin a statement at the bottom. Can you tell us what that means to you? What that statement means?
Well, I've been told by somebody that's not actually technically perfectly correct in terms of Latin, but it is. Life is magic.
Yeah,
life is magic, and the idea actually. If you look a bit deeper into the things that I've done, and I might send you a book anyway that I'm thinking of sending you, called Dragonolia.
Oh.
And basically, if you look up Richard Barron's, which is actually an anagram of Chris Barnardo, and Dragonolia, you'll. I had this sort of invented character, and I did a website for dads and their kids. It was when I became a single dad and separated dad, and I wanted to have some nice things out there because there's such a lot of sadness out there with families breaking up and stuff. And I didn't look at it like that. I tried to look at it like the family was extending and we were going to have a different kind of family and we were going to do things together and we were going to try and make it nice. And in fact, my kids have grown up now. The youngest is 22 and the oldest is 35. So they've grown up and they're in great shape and they're very creative and stuff. So it clearly worked. But my idea was that this guy was this fantasy guy that did all this dragon stuff because I loved Harry Potter, but I didn't want to copy it exactly. So I did, and that's how I got to do the wand. I had a project of how to make your own wizard's wand out of paper, which it took me about 6 weeks to basically invent, I suppose, to sort of think up. And I got the idea. When I was a kid, I used to sit on the top deck of a bus, a double-decker bus, rolling the bus tickets very, very fine. Maybe sweet paper. Maybe people have done it with sweet papers. Rolling it till it was like a little toothpick almost. And then it suddenly dawned on me that if you took a piece of letter paper, in the UK that'd be A4, but in America it's US letter.
Okay.
And you rolled it from corner to corner, really thin, and about halfway along, you just put a little bit of white glue and rolled it up.
So it's thick in the center that way, and then out on the edges it's kind of thinner.
It's thicker at one end.
Yeah.
It's thicker at one end and thin at the other end.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you cut the ends off so they're square, and then you put glue in each end, and then you hot melt glue by rotating it round. You get this kind of knurly look, and then you put maybe some gold paint over it, spray it black, and weather it. It really looks like a wand. It's not dangerous because it's made of paper, but it's still quite stiff. If you stab it on someone, it just breaks. And it was downloaded. No, it was downloaded hundreds of thousands of times, and it was one of the highest featured products on Instructables. It's in the top. It's been consistently in the top 20, I think.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool, and that's what gave me the idea for the wand company.
You've led into something that, as far as the wand goes, taking it to the next level, you're developing a remote for a different company at that point with your friend Richard. It's Blakely, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you take it to here in the U.S. we have the Shark Tank. In the U.K. it's Dragon's Den. You take it to the Dragon's Den. And you did a presentation where you turned on a phone and you turn on a television and you turn on the candle. And later they'd say that was the best presentation. Like they even said other people that come on the show should watch your demo first. It was
pretty cool. In the UK, Dragon's Den, I know what it's like in Shark Tank in the US, but in the UK, Dragon's Den is one of those shows. We don't have particularly massive audiences in the UK, but it will get 4 or 5 million viewers. And so, as one of those sort of niche programs, it's quite big. It's quite up there. It's run by the BBC, which is quite good quality. We actually wrote them and asked to be on it, and they just didn't even write back to us. So we continued with our own funding that we were doing, which was in the end, despite all the venture capitalists I know and all the other people I know, it ended up being friends and family. Mm-hmm. And we put together a really nice little sort of like scenario for how to get the money to make the first tools for the product. And during that process, we also got some press releases and PR. And I don't know if you can do it in the US, but in the UK, we went to a press agency. They get money for selling articles to newspapers. So they don't charge you anything. Uh-huh. And I'd already... The website Dad Can Do, I thought was going to make money, but to be fair, to make money out of a website is actually really difficult. And in those days, we're talking 12 years ago, charging somebody to come on your website and download stuff, it was like no one's interested. So I decided to do a pack of cards, which I was going to sell, and I thought, seeing as it's Dad's, in the UK we have a genre of card called top trumps. Mm-hmm. They are cards which all have sets of different things that you can collect, and you battle against other people with them. And it's a big deal. And they're all to do with different sort of genres, like it'll be Harry Potter or cars or trains or horses. Mm-hmm. And each card has a picture of the thing and then some stats underneath, and you battle with the stats with each other. Mm-hmm. So I'll do a sort of parody of that, calling it Pop Trumps, about dads. Pop. Oh, yeah. And I'll have some famous dads with all their stats, how clever they are, how strong they are, and all that sort of thing. And I was talking to my kid. We were walking up to my flat inside, and I said, "Hey, William, I've got this idea. I'm going to do this game called Pop Trumps. What do you think?" He said, "Dad, that sounds really lame. If you called it Plop Trumps and made it about poo, that would be good." And I thought, yeah, okay. So I said to him, well, if we can do it so it looks scientific and not gross, right? And if we don't make it smutty, we don't have any bad words in it, we just have really scientific stuff, but it's really accurate pictures, right? Then you may have an idea there. So this is why I was talking to you earlier about discovery. Mm-hmm. So we got a gecko. We'll take a really close-up photograph of the gecko's poo. I get poop in the US, poop, and we'll see what it looks like. Oh my God. you can see what it's eaten. The wings of the animals in there, right? It's actually very scientific. So we then drew up a list of about 50 or 60 different poop animals that we could maybe go to. I had to blag my way into a zoo. My kid came with me. He got bitten on the arse by a lion and drew blood. Yeah. A lion, a big lion cub, about the size of a Great Dane, but it was a moment. We went into the meerkat's cage where they all stood around looking at us. It was an adventure. Then made this pack of cards, and I've sold about 750,000 packs of those cards just in the UK.
Wow!
And I have tried to sell them in the US. I've tried to go to people in the US. You can look them up online. Plop trumps. Look them up. They're cool. They're great fun. It's not smutty, but it's kind of gross. And because kids love it, adults love it. It's a Secret Santa present. The original company, Top Trumps, is a big company, Winning Moves. I went to them and asked them, I've got this great idea.
Right.
Do you want me to? They said, wait for this. No, you haven't. We've had every idea that can be had.
Oh, okay.
The patent office in 1909 said everything that can have been invented has already been invented in 1909. So I think we've had quite a few things since then. So anyway, it turns out that they couldn't protect the plop trumps. I could. So I protected the name, and then it sells for twice as much as the brand leading thing, because mine's just out there on its own. So it's a great product. It paid for my kids to go through university. It was really, really useful as a product, as an 11-year-old's mind. And that's what I was saying about discovery. Yeah. I didn't invent that. It was discovered. But I could have easily missed it. And when I did it, loads of people wrote to me and said, I had that idea. Yeah, okay. Well,
you never did anything with it.
Well, ideas are cheap.
Right.
So what we did was I took that to this news agency, and they said, this is great. And they ran with the story, and it got into our we have a in the UK subway called the Underground, and they have a magazine called Metro, and it's given free to everybody on the subway, and so millions of people read it, and they got a half-page article in it with this guy coming up with his plop trumps, poos, whatever, poops. And then it got into other newspapers. It kind of went viral in the UK, and I was actually almost broke, living in a flat, no job. And suddenly, before I knew it, I was sending sacks. I was taking sacks of these things to the post office.
Wow.
It was an easy little project to start. It cost about $5,000 to get the first 5,000 packs made, about $1 each. Right. In India, actually, I got this company in the UK that made its packs in India. And no, it's a thing that anyone could have started. And I think that you have a phrase in the US called getting off the dime. Yeah. And basically, if you want to do something, doing it is the key. Yeah. Doing it. Yeah. Not talking about it and thinking why hasn't anyone done it? Just doing it. You can do it. So the press were from that. So when I came up with the wand, I thought, do you know what? That was easy to do. Perhaps the wand wouldn't be that hard. I would go to my friend who knows electronics and start talking to him and see if we could do it. And then when we got the wand, we went to the same press agency and said, what about this? And then that kind of went viral when they ran some articles. And this is the point of the whole of this side story, is at that point the BBC came to us and said, would you like to be on Dragon's Den?
Wow.
Because some researcher read the article in Metro magazine on the subway. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So we had gone there before, like a year before, saying we need some money, can we go on your show?
No interest at that point. Yeah.
Nothing. The minute we had this bit of publicity, suddenly, yeah. And then they said, we don't want you to tell anyone about it, because if you shoot the show in like April, right, and it's not going to be broadcast till September, you can't blow the gag. Otherwise, we'll sue you for the cost of doing the show and all that sort of thing. So we have to be really secret. So hide
your success is basically...
Yeah. It was. But of course, when the show came out, it was cool. I don't think it's made much difference in the world, but in the UK, yeah, a lot of people said that was a really good thing. Yeah. And we practiced beforehand. We watched every previous episode. We decided all the pitfalls that people fall into. We timed ourselves. We refined our pitch. Yeah. It's tough, and they can make you look like an idiot, because it was 3 hours of filming, and they cut like 8 minutes down. So there's a lot of ums and ahs you might do in 3 hours. Right. Although You can tell I don't do that many ums and ahs, but I mean, you can imagine cutting just about anything you want from it.
Right.
But yeah, we did, and not only that, you're right, it was a good pitch. All the dragons offered the money, and I guess all the sharks would have offered the money.
Right.
And nearly $1 million, I think, in total pledges.
Yeah.
And we went with one of them because I did set as a criteria that we would accept an offer, even if later we blew it out, because you can't not accept it on the show.
You also took this to Japan, where I guess they don't really have a lot of like wand heritage there. Like there's not a lot of, and you sold it there.
I know, and our company has been one where we've done a few projects. Like to start with, it was just me and Richard, so we were just doing whatever we could do. It's grown slowly, organically. We've never expanded beyond. We've never taken on any debt to expand. We just grown organically. But so each year we've had something that's been quite exciting happen to us. And that particular year, we said we've got to expand out in other markets. What can we do? We can do a new product, or we can find some new markets. So again, most countries in the world and developed countries have programs for helping businesses tackle exporting. Because for any country, the economy exporting to other countries is really useful. It brings new money in, and it does great things. So in the UK, it was called the UKTI, and they have a program called the Overseas Mission something or other, OMIS program, and they have actual experts in different countries who, if you want to go and export to Germany or you want to export to Japan or America, they will help you get into that country. To be fair, and I'm sure you would know this from any system, is that the quality of what you get is variable. And there's some grants to help you pay for it, but some of it is you have to pay for. And some of those guys in some countries, and I have to say, the further west you go, they tend to just get the old yellow pages out and scroll their finger down and say, oh, you can go to this, and this company, and they just tell you what those companies are. The further east you go, the more diligent they are. And the Japanese person was really thorough. And they invited us to go to a trade show there. So we went to a trade show, and we were able to go on a booth of the UKTI without paying any money and put a little corner of our product on the booth. And we got quite a few commercial inquiries. And I mean, that was the same with Dragon's Den. After that show aired, we sold something like about 50K's worth of product within that week, which was, as a little company for us, was a real boost. But we also got 100 commercial inquiries. We got people writing to us saying, don't take their money, take our money. We got retailers, shops saying, we'll take it. There's big stores saying, we want to do it. So in fact, for a showcase for your product, it was much better from that point of view, is that a lot of entrepreneurial people obviously watch that show. And it doesn't really matter if the market as a wider market don't. The innovators, the early adopters, they're the ones that watch that show. But the Japanese thing, we had this booth, we got some good contact with some, it was quite exciting actually. We got some good contact with some distributors. And then the embassy said, hey, if you want to do a launch, you could do it in the embassy. And the guys will love that. The press will come. We'll put on the British embassy. We'll do this thing. It's really quite exciting. And at that exact time, when we were ready to do it, the tsunami hit.
Oh, no.
And then Fukushima, the nuclear power station, blew up. Then there was nuclear debris everywhere. And we were saying, could we go? Was it radiated? We were calculating. They were very robust in Japan. They were just going, yeah, business is carrying on like normal. It's been a bit of a rubbish few weeks, but we're going to carry on. I mean, that tsunami was terrible. However, on the day of the presentation, I was in the hotel rehearsing, and previously we had used a video playing on a TV to control. Right. And obviously a video, you don't want something that's, if you're going to show it on air, you don't want something that's basically you're going to have to get permission for. Right. And Richard had a video that his friend had shot in Hawaii of these great surfers on massive waves, the waves the size of buildings. And we had used that in all previous shows to show. And as I was getting ready in the morning, and I was thinking, they have just had a tsunami here, which has wiped out these territories. Right. And I am showing to a whole bunch of Japanese press a video with enormous waves on it and people riding them on surfs. I think it's really insensitive So in the cab on the way to the presentation, I said to the cab driver and my translator, can we stop at a video store and we'll buy a video that I can play?
It was Studio Ghibli that you played, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It really was. It was. Oh, my kids love that show, which is My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a fabulous film. And when I introduced my kids to manga and anime, and they just all that Japanese. I mean, two of them are learning Japanese. They've grown up wanting to learn Japanese. One of them, for his birthday, his mum took him to Japan as a part of his 16th or his 18th birthday. I can't remember. Yeah. But no, it's a lovely film anyway. It's so weird.
It's a good fit for magic. I mean, that's a good one. Yeah.
And yeah, it is absolutely. And their approach captures that idea in my mind of that sort of magical fantasy reality with the cat bus and also the peacefulness of the being at one with the environment and being at one with your space. The way the kids grow into the house and the little things that happen in the house, and the dad says, you have to accept these things. They live here with us. That philosophy, I really love it. And if our products should occupy your space, they should increase your world and your fantasy, but they should take the footprint that they take up should fit within your life. I just love the idea of that. So we try to make our packaging small. It's not so disposable. You can throw it away if you want, but we try to make it part of the product, so you want to keep it.
Can't throw it away. You made it too hard. Even the paper, the stuffing for it is stuff I had to put in the frame on the wall, huh?
I know. Some of the things I just think to myself, when we started in the manual, I said, manuals are normally those horrible folded up bits of paper, like the writing's so small you can't read it. And I said we should make our manuals a piece of art that people would want to frame, and that people would want to keep those things. And then on the back, we should have a picture, like a blueprint or something else, a map. And me and Richard is in our relationship, I'm the accelerator and Richard is the brakes of caution. And he will say, that will cost an extra 5 cents. We can't. Now, we don't tend to scrimp, as you can tell. Right. All the money we have goes, we don't have distributors because of that, because we don't have enough margin in the product to have a distributor and then a retailer. Because most products, everybody's having to make their cut. Yeah. So when you buy a fancy watch, probably it cost about a quarter of what you paid for it to be made. And I feel that it's not good value for the customer. Right. So we try to put all the effort into the product. So I'd say the manual, there isn't any good reason to have, like you showed that postcard. Right. Normally you wouldn't get a postcard with a product, but to me, it feels like it's really important part of the value proposition.
Oh, and the pin. You've got the pin.
Oh, yeah.
Too, right? I mean, that wasn't necessary. You didn't have to.
No, right? And I have to say, there's a nice story about that too, because my eldest son, is a designer, and he did really well at college, and he's great. He's 25. He's a great designer, and he's really into computer video games, and he's really into Fallout, and he really is very cerebral as well. How he thinks about things. He's not just a sort of designer. He thinks through issues in a deconstructive, reconstructive way, which is I love. And so I came to start doing the Fallout. And before Fallout, we had always made things that were the life size. They were the right size. So we didn't want to make small metal spaceships. We did not want to make things that were big, but we made them small. Right. So if you look at everything that we've done, the sonic screwdriver, the Pip-boy, the phaser, the communicator, they're all at the correct size for what they would be, and they're really accurate. How do you make a car, an auto? How do you make that at the correct size? You can't. I'd love to make a life-size one of it. Oh yeah. And I did investigate it, and I think maybe we'll hook up at some point. We can make one using large vacuum thermoformings that they use to make things like swimming pools and hot tubs. Because you can make panels like that.
It would have to be light. Yeah.
I've got all the CAD. You could stick two panels together and put that expanding foam between them, so it'd be light, but it would be like a composite panel, be really, really strong, like the airplane panels with Nomex in them, but it would be our own version of it. Anyway, another fancy day. Another fancy day. And it'd be great to have that as a kit. Oh yeah, and sell it for $1,000, and I can imagine people buying it as well with a lawnmower engine, in the back. And, Bingo. Anyway, fancy dream for another life. But so I said to my kid, James, how can we do this thing and make it? Because I definitely want to make die-cast cars. And then he came up with the idea, make it like a gift from the company Chrysler to its employees.
Yeah.
Because then it is actually the real size that they would have got.
Yeah.
And it itself in that universe is a mock-up of the real thing.
Yeah.
And that's when the idea of, I don't know if you've seen on the various things, and maybe you've seen them, but the pictures of the sort of like dealership, the Fusion dealership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this idea that it would be good to create a whole universe around the thing. So that's where the postcards came from. And then obviously I need to be able to take photographs of the cars, and it would be really cool if they were renderings in good situations. So I worked with this guy called Matt Bagshaw, who'd been a game designer, who's a genius model maker, a modeler, and said, look, I've got this ideas of having a sort of dealership. Could you work on it? And he did the most incredible work on that dealership, and we use him for a lot of things. He's funny enough, I met him because I wanted to make my eldest boy, when he was at college, he did one of his things was a design for a logo, and for his 21st birthday, I thought it'd be really nice to make a figurine of it. And I know my own skill limitations, so I looked around on the internet and found this guy Matt Bagshaw, and said to him, if I gave you a 2D logo, could you make a 3D figurine of it? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And I said, could you make, and then I want a 3D print of it in color. So that started a relationship with that guy, making stuff. He's a genius guy, and he can, if I'm doing a model and I've got something really modeled up nicely, but I need a strap sort of dangling around it, and I don't want to go through the trouble of doing that in CAD, then I'll email him and say, I've got this thing, it needs a strap, can you do me a leather strap for it? And he'll just do the CAD of just the strap, and then I'll drop it into my model.
Oh, that's
and it works
great.
really well. So he has been instrumental in doing the design work for the cars. And but that pin was part of the thing that James came up with, was the idea of that it would be for 2 years service.
Right.
And then the next one would be for 5 years service. And in fact, if you get them all together, they would make a whole big pin.
So this would be like something you'd give to the salesperson for their display item as well as their for their years of service, and that is pretty neat. That is pretty cool.
If you look online at the showroom pictures, I think you can see there might be some little stacks of. I certainly got images myself, which I maybe can send to you, but there's little stacks of those boxes in the back of the showroom where there's people walking around the showroom thinking, oh, I can't buy the car, but I'll buy that box.
Yeah. And
then if you're an employee of Chrysler's, you get one. And in a sort of ironic truth coming true thing, fantasy coming true, we made 40 or 41 or something of those special coloured ones, where they were red and white with the word 19, letters 19 on them, for employees of ThinkGeek.
Oh, really? That's funny.
They were sent out, right? And because they're so rare, one of them sold on eBay for $3,400.
Wow, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's something really, really pleased you. Is I was at E3 last year, and I was talking to some guys, and he said I bid $6,000 for that, and I won it at $3,400. So I said, that's amazing. I've got 2 of those on my desk. And so this other guy jumps out and says, I'll buy one of you. So I said, well, I genuinely couldn't sell it to you for $3,000 because that guy's established the value, because I'd feel that would be really, really opportunistic and ripping everyone off. But if you donate $3,000 to charity, I'll give it to you for free.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So he goes, well, on our Fallout group, there's a girl who's got really seriously ill. She's got a Just Giving page and she's looking for money. So if I donate to that, would that be okay? So I said, yeah, you show me that you've donated and I'll get the person back in my office to mail it to you directly.
Wow.
And then another guy came and said, I'll do that as well. So within the space of about 5 minutes, we had raised $6,000 for a cancer charity, and we'd given away 2 of these products, which were just basically invented. I mean, it's a very nice little story. It's kind of like, but in the fantasy world, and it's actually the people that I bumped into are so giving and so enthusiastic that if you treat them with such respect like we do, utter respect for their fantasy, utter respect for their thinking, then you get just lots of love and joy back. Yeah. It's a lovely world to be part of.
Something I've been wanting to ask you about too is when you go and do these presentations, because it's easy to at first glance for most people that aren't, especially that aren't geeks or might not know some of these things or might not be into magic wands initially. and you show them this thing suddenly do something, and you see that change in their demeanor, or in that moment where suddenly they're excited about it. What is that like for you? Because you must do that over and over again. That's what your thing is.
Yeah, it's very cool actually. I think one of the first things that I did with the wand is I got once I'd had the wand. Obviously, my kids, I tested things out with my kids a lot. I got and I'm the eldest of 5, so I've got brothers and sisters that are lower than me down before, and I've got parents. So I've got a cohort of people that I can sort of bounce ideas off that I would tend to think, and even if I don't actually ask them, I play the idea through their eyes in my head and think, how would it appeal to them, without even needing to ask them, because I know what they like and I know what they like. So with the wand, I had a model maker friend of mine, because we didn't have any money. Because I'd given him so much work in the past. I said, look, do me a favor. Can you make me? Here's my design for the wand. Can you make me a wooden one that's exactly the right size, but is my wand? And then I took my youngest kid, who was, I don't know, must have been, so it was 12 years ago now, and he's 22. So he was about 10 or 9. And I said, Albie, look at this. There's a television. Stand there, watch this. I got the wand out. Behind my back, I had a remote control. And there's a large picture on the wall with a glass front. So I'm pointing the remote control at the picture, hoping that the IR will bounce off the picture and do the telly. And I get the one, and I said, have you seen this? My latest invention. Because I'm always inventing things. And so he goes, right. So I said, so I flicked across like that, and the channel changed on the television. And it was like he had been had with an electric shock. Now that is the moment when you realise you have got a product here. That's what it's going to do. So I'm not cheating it. Anyway, I then, so spin forward a few months, maybe a year, we have an actual product. And I went to a show, it was like Electronica or something in Europe, in one of the big electronic shows. And there's 3 French guys, hardened journalists, like looking at stuff saying, this is rubbish, this is rubbish. Sorry for my little French accent there, but I have to say my grandmother was French, so and it's just, oh, zut alors, whatever. So I go and say, show them the one. They go, well, you'd have to be like on another planet, in a coma, or in prison for like 50 years not to know of Harry Potter. Right. But anyway, they're all go, yeah, whatever. So I give it to the first guy and say, I'm quite enthusiastic. You look like a really hard-nosed, gall-wad smoking journalist. You don't give a crap about anything. So there you go. So they get their wand in the hand, the first one, and I say, if you just do this, it will control. And I've got something that I'm controlling. And the first guy does it, and the look on his face was just like my 10-year-old son. And the other guys say, hey, give it to me. I want to try. He's not good at it. And then they start doing the thing, and they go, I'm a proper magician. I can do it easily. And it was useless and all that sort of thing. And say, there you go. That can make a grown man weep. That to me is fine. And I had the same response. I know it's going back to this from Plop Trumps, where an adult can find it funny and give it as a gift to another adult. Right. A child can find it funny. It's a thing which crosses all ages because it's been well thought through. And I think the wand is like that. It has its limits because now most televisions that are being made now are Bluetooth controlled. They're not radio. They're not IR. So a lot of things that were IR when we started, you could get IR light switches and IR light bulbs and things have all stopped. And so we haven't moved our technology on. And the wand wasn't licensed because we didn't have any skills in licensing. We didn't have the money to do it. So what we wanted to do was just do our own thing, which is why it's the Chimera wand, which not spelt correctly as well, spelt with a K. And Chimera is for all those people out there who aren't classical buffs, is a mixture of 2 things. Basically, it's an animal made from 2 different animals. It's a chimera. It's spelled with a C, but. So this thing is an ancient-looking wand, and inside it, it's got this modern electronics, which is why it's a chimera. And to be fair, the original name for it was Dragonheart.
Oh, okay.
Because I love the idea that inanimate objects have a name,
Right.
because it gives them a personality. So in Lord of the Rings, you got the sword that's called Sting,
Right.
and they're all scared of it because it bites. It's got a sting,
Right.
and so to have a thing that has a name that you imbues already a sense of character to it. So the original one was Dragonheart, and I had lovely designs, and it had a dragon heart string in the middle of it and everything like that.
Ooh.
But actually, I think Dragonheart is a film, obviously.
It is. Yep. 2 films. Yep.
Yeah, 2 films, yeah, indeed. And the first one has Sean Connery in it, and I think, and of course, when I looked online, it had been, the name Dragonheart had been registered for just about everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have been a problem, but if I want to start doing Dragonheart this and Dragonheart that, I was going to have a problem. So the original designs all had Dragonheart. So about halfway through, we said, that can't be right. We've got to do something else. It's our own thing. And so we came up, I came up with the name Chimera. And for ages, people like, Think Geek and different companies called it just the Magic Wand, because obviously that's a great name.
Yeah.
It's just, want to get a magic wand.
It's generic enough, too. You could sell it wherever and not worry about it.
But I still like the idea of it having a name. And so, I mean, I think I discovered something else, which is this idea of this line that we tread between reality and fantasy. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to... it's like when you tell a kid you have a dolly and you say, oh, it's alive, and it's this. It isn't. We know it's not alive because I'm not stupid.
Right.
But it might have a character. It might live in some fantasy world like a Toy Story toy that has a alternate reality somewhere else, and I can buy into that. So with the manuals and various things, I wanted them to be on the edge of that fantasy reality, so they actually feel real, but they also are in this fantasy world, so that you can, as a user, you can tread between the two. So, for example, I went to some conventions and noticed that fans ask William Shatner to sign their box. They do not ask Captain Kirk to sign the box.
Right. That's right.
But when they hold it, they want to be Captain Kirk. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And I think if you can get that, and you can get that every bit of the product you do, owning is believing. That is the whole point of where you have this thing where fans want it to be really real and work like a real thing, the communicator, but they also want it to be really accurate to the prop. Yeah. The prop might be rubbish. It might be falling apart. It might be painted 10 times. It might not actually look any good, and it certainly might not feel real. Right. And a lot of those props for Doctor Who, they look like someone made them at school. I mean, they really do look.
They don't last
when you go
long
and see,
either. Yeah.
When you see the props table, some of them are cut out of cardboard.
Yeah.
You just think, what? How does that look anything on the screen? But it does. So when you're actually trying to make a thing of a prop, some props are fantastic and they're really beautifully made. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, the communicator is one of those props. It's actually very, very lovely. Mm-hmm. The fact that other people who'd made copies of it before had done such a bad job was just our benefit. But they had done a bad job. It was the wrong thickness, it was the wrong width, it was wrong this, it was wrong that. The surface texture was incorrect. But actually it's well made. The phaser is in terrible condition. There's only one of it. It's worth millions of dollars. We know the guy that owns these things, and we've been to see him. We've scanned them in. We have handled them. We know exactly. Yeah. And by being the way we are, which is genuinely respectful and honest, and actually having no side to us, because I love the props, but I'm just not a prop. I wouldn't be a prop collector. I would just as happily have a replica if it was accurate. Right. Like we had this big discussion with Richard. If you could have a diamond ring, then you didn't know it wasn't a real diamond, or a Monet painting that was molecule by molecule the same. Would you care that it wasn't Monet or it was just a copy?
Depends on person to person, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does, and situation to situation.
Yeah.
And actually, with 3D printing and stuff, I think in the world that we go forward to, there'll be things in the future that'll be so accurate. They'll be molecule by molecule the same. The fact that they're not actually the original won't really matter that much, because you'll know the original exists somewhere. But if you had a Monet, you wouldn't hang it on your wall in my house. I mean, you wouldn't put it there. Yeah. You'd have to put it in a safe somewhere, and you'd have a copy there. Yeah. So you wouldn't even have the real one to look at anyway.
No. Well, so the one thing about doing this was that this is the right weight with all that stuff that I put in it. Yeah. Whereas we did this project, and it looks painted like it's a heavy, heavy red metal, like the 1950s toys, and yet it's too light. And so my mind, your mind registers that. It knows it doesn't weigh right, it doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, there's something about it has to feel and look right.
It has for your gun there, and I did a model made thing for the kids, which was this is where the model making thing started. The junk model started. The Dad Can Do junk model. One day they're in the bath and they say, "Hey, we want something to play with in the bath. Can you make a submarine?" And the bath's running, right? The bath's running. Bear in mind, so a squash bottle. I cut the top of one of those pump dispenser things and stuck it on like the coning tower with glue gun glue, which is instantaneous. And then I thought, well, that's never going to float properly. So I went outside to the drive, got some gravel, put it inside the bottle and like shut the lid and squirted some glue gun glue in to weight it down so it was stuck. And then, of course, because the gravel's on it, it floats upright. And then I just sprayed it with car paint. And then that dried in the time it took the bath to run. And then just did some writing on the side and gave it to them and said, there you go. And then anyone could do this in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You could make some things from very, very complicated to really simple. And they could be quick little projects. But the net result is that if you make a floating thing for your kids in the bath, it floats upside down. It's rubbish.
Right.
If you put stones inside it and it floats the right way up, it's fun and they'll play with it for the whole thing.
Right.
So that is the thing that tells me that if you do something and pay attention to those funny little details, then the net result that you get is exactly what you want. So for your gun, you could weigh some stones on a weighing scales, put them in, or nuts and bolts and things, glue them in with glue gun glue, or araldite, with
some lead beads,
epoxy, or just nuts and bolts. I mean, you don't need much. And so when we did our products, we thought, well, what would it be if it was a real product? For example, how would the phaser come? It would come in a box, like a gun case.
Right.
The communicator could come in a box.
Yeah.
So once you start thinking through the actual product, and then I was worried with the phaser, for example, that box is not Canon. So what are the fans going to say? Are they going to hate it? Is CBS going to say, no, you can't do it? But actually, it's completely different. If you do it with respect and you do it with love and joy, then actually everybody really wants it. And some people wrote to us and said, I'd buy that phaser just for the box, which is really weird because the box is the least Canon thing. It's just made up. But also from a designer's point of view, from my point of view, it gives me a chance to do something that hasn't already been done by somebody else. Yeah. So, for example, in the Pip-boy, the box it came in, I can just let my mind go wild and think, it would be cardboard, it would be from Voltec, it would be this. Well, the outside box, the main part of that picture was painted by a guy that I found online.
Oh,
he
really?
did a nice... Yeah, but I needed to retouch it because there was a load of stuff on it that I didn't... I'm quite cool with Photoshop, to be fair. But I couldn't have done that watercolor painting myself. But on the inside of the box, I did all that illustration. That I did myself. And
that is
based on renders and things like that, and the design as well. Years ago, I did some work for a company called Frame Store, which does all the post-production for Harry Potter, Batman, and things now. Wow. But in those days, it was just starting off. Yeah. And in fact, my daughter, my eldest child, my daughter is video animation for films. She was an animator on Ballerina. She just was an animator on Willoughby's that just came out on Netflix. She was one of the main animators on Willoughby's.
That's very cool.
She worked for Frame Store for a number of years because I knew the guys right back when I was about 18, 19. I knew the guys from Frame Store and they were just starting off. And it's a massive company. I mean, you can look it up. It's called Frame Store, and they do post-production for big commercials, but they do for big films or Marvel films, and they did masses of post-production for Avatar. They paint out all the reflections on all the things. They add stuff to every frame. And we did this advert for them years ago, like it was the 1950s, because they had a very 50s kind of style, and it had these kind of like slabs of stuff coming in, and these watercolor pictures of the guy standing with the sort of second in command of the company, like looking into the distance, like it was some sort of 1950s film poster. And I just love that. In a way, it's a cheat. The stuff that I've done that you like on the Pip-boy is so, in a way, easy to do because there's so much reference. Right. And it's such a solid genre. Doing something new from scratch that has no basis is actually much harder because you've got a blank sheet of paper. There's nothing you can look up to say, how should it look? Right. What style, what typeface are you going to use? For that stuff that's retro 50s, people made all those decisions, whether they made them cleverly or badly, or they were experts. They got the typefaces out. Maybe they only had a limited set of stuff.
Yeah.
But the stuff they did has a certain sort of life to it. It's very easy to copy that.
You know, I was a little worried. So Chris, we did this in these intros to try and look like they were the 1950s commercials, which
they were great.
I have Timmy here. But at the same time, I think it's getting to the point where I wasn't sure if younger audiences would recognize this way you have to speak and some of the words you'd have to say and things, and like maybe it would get past them, and I think we might be getting to that point where maybe people wouldn't recognize it. But instead, I was surprised how many people actually identified. Oh yeah, that looks like something from the 1950s. Like it had to have that slight blue to the tint and things too.
Of course.
You know, and people pick up on that. So if you don't have all of that, of course they recognize it. So there is something great about it.
I think there are some things that people won't. Like we were talking about the cow gum and the wax rollers and things. There are people that really have and the photomechanical transfer, the Repromaster machines and the Grant projector that you put your head in and you wheeled up and down.
We're doing that too.
You know, obviously, and typographers, line setting type, not having the what used to be called the WYSIWYG type sort of interface that you get. Having ones which was control line interface where you type these many characters, then do a carriage return, then do this, then do that. I mean, you can't believe how hard it was.
Well, and at the same time, like with video games, I'm surprised. The video games I was playing as a kid and thought, someday we'll get to where graphics are better and we will be doing things. There's always that imagination of things like they're releasing now with VR and things. And yet, my kids are still playing these 8-bit games and these.
I'm loving them.
They bought into I played those games so that we wouldn't have to later.
Exactly. No, my eldest one will go back to. I'm trying to think what it is now. Not Ratchet and Clank. It was one. I can't remember what it is. There's Coco in it. What is that one? Where there's a. Oh, anyway, whatever. They're basically it's those games where you run like the Mario Super Brothers type games, but it's just where you're running along a path and there's things coming at you, and he loves it. And when it came out, there was versions of it that came out. He would still go back and play on the computer the old PlayStation 1 version. Try and get the most useless version of it. Just loves it.
Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah, that's it. You got it. You got it.
I think I'm gonna give you something. I'm gonna send it to you. I mean, it's not super cool, but I think as far as meaning goes, I think it might have some meaning for you. So,
it's the cat bus.
There's the
over slightly. I can't quite see it.
That was like one of the first things I did. But yeah, it has the cat bus in there, and it has the frog and the umbrella, and of course the stop is right there. So that'll we'll get that out there to you. So I think that'll be a good fit for you.
That would be amazing. Right. Well, I had a package going out to you today, but I might have to send you a couple of other things too then. We'll have to do a little swap.
We want to thank you, Chris, for being willing to talk to us today and for so long.
Talking for hours.
In fact, I should probably tell everyone that this is about a 3-hour interview. And so I'm going to be cutting this down. So
please,
the video probably doesn't cover everything, and I'm planning on releasing another video that has the bits that I've taken out. Make sure that you keep watching us, subscribe, comment below. Also, check out the Wand Company at their site, which I'll put in the description below. I'll also put a link to it up here. In the meantime, Chris, you want to take us out?
This is your Geek Fix.